Over 1 million citizens in the state have been involved in the 4-H program over the last 100 years.
I joined 4-H in 1965, and my main projects were beef cattle and swine.
Chickens was my project. Jersey black giants, which you never heard of anymore. They're all gone by the wayside.
When we go back in history, a lot of people belong to 4-H, and they remember back in the days when it was cows and cooking.
And she stuck the spoon in the blender before it had stopped, and so Purple Cow went all over the place, and we got a red ribbon that year, and I was devastated because I was a blue ribbon kind of girl.
I started in 4-H when my parents started the Eager Beavers 4-H club.
I met people from the Panhandle, people who were like Jane Giroux, who was a 4-H'er who became Miss America.
Music is just something I love, no matter what kind it is. So 4-H Club really enhanced it.
Well, some people think that I have green blood, and I probably do.
I owe my entire life to 4-H.
Hello and welcome to Sunup. I'm Clinton Griffiths. The end of 2009 marked a very unique milestone for this state, the completion of 100 years of Oklahoma 4-H. The 4-H story is a simple one. Since the beginning of this country, since we the people, since the Oklahoma Land Run, America has held one resource most precious, its youth. With an abundance of programs, countless dollars spent on education, and the will to see the next generation succeed in ways ours never could, America's youth has survived and prospered right along with our country. And folded into that legacy of success is an idea to make the best better, to use our best resource to help change the course of history. It was true in our country, and it's true in our state. That idea or motto lives inside a small green clover in an organization called 4-H. It was the turn of the century in Oklahoma. The land runs had come and gone, and the state was dotted with first-generation farmers. At that time, cotton was king, much like it was across the rest of the South. But a pesky little pest, the boll weevil, was making surviving on cotton a gambling man's game. Farmers needed help, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture was ready with assistance. In 1904, a gentleman by the name of Walter Dimmitt Bentley took a job as a special agent for the Farmers Cooperative Demonstration Work, a program sponsored by the USDA. Its goal, quite simply, was to show farmers new and better ways of farming. The agents were assigned an area, and Bentley was stationed in North Texas, near Wichita Falls. His work included lecturing and setting up demonstration farms. In 1907, Bentley was assigned all of western Oklahoma, and in 1908, the entire state.
The farmers then saved their seed corn and their cotton seed. They didn't go out each year and buy seed, they saved their own. And that's the type of corn they were planting, whatever seed they had. So he talked the farmers into planting a better quality of corn. And the way I remember it, there were only 7 men in this area, in this county area, that did that the first year. And the only 2 I know were Daddy and Bill Murray.
Before Bentley left Texas, an idea from a fellow agent caught his eye. Tom Marks took 25 boys from Jack County, Texas, and gave them all hybrid corn seed to plant. The group was called a Corn Club. Since 1902, similar clubs had been popping up all over the country. And in 1909, Bentley started the first Corn Club in Oklahoma, in the town of Tishomingo.
W.D. Bentley and Mr. Brogdon, who was Vera Taylor's father, and William H. Murray, Alfalfa Bill Murray, who later became governor, were great visionaries and organized a club for boys here in Tishomingo. And the idea was to provide corn for these young boys to plant at their home farms and then bring in a bushel. Of course, they had to keep records of when they planted, first production, how much produce it had, and then they were to bring in a certain amount for a contest. And it was judged very similar to the way we do a county fair today.
They'd have to count out the number of feet in a row and calculate the number of bushels per acre, even if they didn't have a whole acre of corn planted. And the interesting part was that in many cases, the boys that were planting these new hybrid varieties got higher yields than their dads were getting in the fields all around. And this was really the beginning of test plots and utilizing young people to access and get information into farm families.
The Corn Clubs met at one of the only places they could, at school, and it wasn't long before other clubs began to organize. Oklahoma girls began growing tomatoes, forming tomato clubs, and some planted and grew as much as an acre, which led them to look for ways of preserving that produce. The state's first canning clubs were born. It wasn't long after that that these clubs became known as 4-H clubs, and by 1914, the organization was established nationwide.
It was from 1910 to 1920 that all of the major youth programs were started. Boys and Girls Clubs, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, 4-H, all started in that same basic time frame. The country was really looking for a way to help young people develop their skills and become an important part of their communities.
The 4-H's stood for head, heart, hands, and hustle, which was later changed to health. All 4-H projects, education, and experiences fell into one of these 4 categories. State agents began holding the annual 4-H competitions during county fairs. A blue ribbon was the prize for a year of hard work on a project. Oklahoma youth learned a lot of valuable lessons about rural living, allowing them to be more involved at home and in the community. Little did W.D. Bentley know how valuable these youth would be in the coming years. During World War I, 4-H'ers became known as soldiers of the soil. Their contributions helped feed and clothe Americans fighting halfway around the world. Following the war, many of those men and women returned to life on the farm, only to find life on the farm had fallen behind.
The Industrial Revolution was in full swing at this time. After World War I, there was a huge exodus from the rural areas back into the cities, and everyone was interested in becoming more mechanized and more industrialized. So there was a lot of focus on the part of the land-grant universities to figuring out how to take the new technology to the country. The rural areas were frankly falling behind their cousins in the cities. So the Extension Service, and 4-H being a part of the Extension Service, was part of that effort to bring modern technology to the farm. And all the way up through World War II, almost all of our 4-H members were farm boys and girls.
By the 1920s, 4-H was opening its doors to other audiences. African American and Native American youth were joining clubs with help from their own dedicated team of agents. With radio filling the airwaves, the 20s were roaring. J.D. Edmondson actually started in 4-H in 1918, and nearly 90 years later, he still remembers those first days in 4-H.
Well, I joined the 4-H club when we lived at Clinton when I was just 9, 10 years old.
Edmondson and his parents moved twice more. Each time, he remained an active member.
And I learned to operate a level that you do terracing with. But I had 4-H projects in about everything, crops and anything I could gather up.
Like many other 4-Hers around the state, he showed swine, raised poultry, and grew corn.
Well, the majority of the projects in the 20s and 30s were directly related to the farm. Raising animals, raising crops. Again, the girls were canning those crops, learning about good nutrition, food preservation, and somewhere along the line, the girls also started doing clothing projects and home furnishings, learning how to use their everyday products to improve the quality of life in their homes.
Edmondson's last move took him to a small Logan County town called Nevina. By that time, 4-H had moved from purely production-based competitions into individual and team skill events.
We had a pretty good little judging team, livestock team there in Logan County. Myself and a boy from Harvey Nevins from Pleasant Valley, which was north of Coyle. But we judged for several years. I think we finally won third at the state contest up there at Stillwater.
Ray Parker also remembers those first years of 4-H.
Way back in, I think it was 1927, I went to a country school way down in southwest McLean County, French school, district number 37, and the teachers there were our 4-H leaders, and the county agent would come out about once a month, and we'd have meetings, and we'd give speeches and sing songs and play games, and do those kinds of things. And then it was always a good day because we got out of class when the county agent came along. Chickens was my project. Jersey black giants, which you never heard of anymore. They're all gone by the wayside.
In 1921, Oklahoma held its first 4-H roundup on the library lawn of what was then Oklahoma A&M.
This was mostly farm kids, country kids, and getting to come to Oklahoma A&M College and the campus and ride the school bus up and do it. This was a big thing. This was a big event.
Contrary to what a lot of 4-H members may believe, I did not ever attend Roundup when it was in a tent, but I've heard a lot of the stories about back in the day whenever 4-H members came by wagon or bus or hitchhiked or however they could to get here. Whenever back then there were thousands of young people from across the state that came to State 4-H Roundup.
In those days, the girls wore white dresses trimmed in green, and the boys wore white shirts, white pants, and that was the uniform. And everybody dressed about the same then.
You also have to realize that in the 30s and 40s and 50s, there were not a lot of other opportunities for non-college students to come to the university. So the 4-H Roundup at Oklahoma A&M at that time was one of the best and only opportunities for young people to experience campus life. And over the years, thousands and thousands of Oklahomans have made their first trip to OSU as a result of 4-H Roundup.
In 1924, Oklahoma 4-H members also had the honor of attending the first National 4-H camp in Washington, D.C.
Young people had that opportunity to go and see firsthand what happens in Washington, to see the place, to see the history that is there. And so that's part of that tradition of going and seeing the roots of our national government.
4-H'ers camped out on the lawn of the USDA and attended functions across the D.C. area, including the White House. In true club fashion, each young lady constructed her own official 4-H dress uniform for the trip. Members from Oklahoma also traveled to places like Chicago and Kansas City for various national meetings and competitions.
B.A. Pratt was the head of the department back in those days, and he liked big numbers. So he would get a trip up there, and then he would divide it and send 2. I don't know. Interesting gentleman.
The stock market crash of 1929 contributed to a drop in farm commodity prices. Times got tough, and the Great Depression had begun.
There wasn't any money, and the oil wasn't worth anything. It was a very common sight to see folks with a sack on their back with their groceries walking out in the country.
During that time, about 1.5 million Oklahomans lived in rural parts of the state. Farm incomes fell 64%. Drought buried the crops and the livelihoods of many Oklahomans under a wall of dust.
Early in '36, it turned hot. It turned dry. The grasshoppers took over. I mean, they took over. They ate everything that was green.
While Oklahoma agriculture struggled through the 30s, 4-H seemed to flourish. By 1937, all 77 Oklahoma counties had 4-H clubs, and enrollment was at 50,000. As the program grew, so did the annual Roundup event in Stillwater.
4-H Roundup was being held here on the campus, and they were using large, you'd really call them circus tents, to house the delegates for 4-H Roundup.
In 1936, J.D. Edmondson, now a county agent himself, was there, sitting just outside of the tent watching crowds of people enter for one of the day's assemblies.
And B.A. Pratt was our state agent, and he liked to have a big crowd, and he had all of his political friends and about anything else of influence there that night. And a number of we assistant agents were not under the tent, but we were just sitting on the sidewalk behind Morrill Hall.
In true spring weather fashion, a storm blew in. Wind howled between the campus buildings, and the huge tent collapsed on top of everyone inside. After calming some frightened kids and assessing the damage, luckily, no one was seriously injured.
And Dr. Bennett went to the legislature and said, we need something for these kids to meet in. And they used the name of 4-H to get the appropriation. It was originally the 4-H and Student Activity Building.
Astute legislators saw the opportunity, along with university officials, saw the opportunity to use the popularity of 4-H to get a new student activity building on the campus. So it was a very shrewd move on their part to go to the legislature, take some 4-Hers and promote the idea that the OSU campus needed a large enough meeting hall to hold all of the students that came for 4-H Roundup. If you go to Gallagher-Iba Arena today and you go to the inside walkway, you'll still see on the outside of the building that the carved stone figures are of young men and women in agricultural pursuits.
So you see, without 4-H, this hallowed hall may never have been built. And while today Gallagher-Iba Arena is the hardwood home of the Oklahoma State Cowboys, it's also still living its original purpose. Oklahoma's Army of Youth would once again find their calling in late 1939 with the beginning of World War II. As they did in the First World War, by 1942, 4-H members were once again supporting soldiers through the 4-H Mobilization for Victory. Club members participated in the first National Victory Scrap Drive, collecting metal, paper, and rubber. They sold savings bonds and harvested fresh fruits and vegetables from victory gardens, then preserving it, all in a response to the Feed the Fighter campaign. It was estimated that 4-H boys and girls produced or preserved enough food to care for 1 million fighting men for 3 years. Following the end of World War II, our state and our nation saw growth and prosperity.
All the GIs came home, wanted to move to the city, get a college education, move off the farm, and it was really at that point that 4-H began to become much more urban and suburban. And we also experienced huge growth as people had more discretionary time and energy. They were not farming with mules and horses anymore. Farming was becoming much more mechanized. So even the farm families had more time for activities like 4-H.
That picture of me and some of my ribbons, 6 years after 6 years of club work. Champion dress review picture in 1947. And that's where we went to the state 4-H roundup at Stillwater in 1949. And there we are, displaying the Washington County 4-H sign that we put up.
60 years ago, Joe Jeter was knee-deep in his days as an Oklahoma 4-H'er.
Well, that one was the Grand Champion steer. That was 1946.
And that was just one of his many successes. In 9 years of 4-H, Joe's projects earned him nearly $30,000, which in the late 1940s and early 50s was a chunk of change.
That steer was a reserve Grand Champion.
Joe came by 4-H naturally. In fact, his father was one of the state's very first Corn Club members. Joe's collection proves that as a second-generation 4-H'er, he made his own mark. Across the state, Mary Sue Sanders was doing the same. She joined 4-H in 1948.
Well, I did all the home economics type projects. I did home improvement, clothing, foods and nutrition. We called it cooking back then. And I did some electric projects. One of my first demonstrations was cleaning an oscillating fan, one of those old kind that we used to use.
Mary Sue's electric project is one example of the educational shift 4-H was making in the late 40s and 50s.
Oh, the projects diversified, projects like photography and woodworking. For the girls, more projects in the areas of home furnishings, child care and babysitting. There were many new projects to take up the interest of boys and girls that had this leisure time, and also those that we were recruiting from the urban areas.
In spite of those new educational areas, the foundational projects like agriculture and home economics remained.
Waiting till the last minute to do my sewing projects, and my mother hated for me to do that, and because she was a perfectionist, I was not. And so our memories has to do with kind of fussing, but in the end it was for the best. I mean, because I had to take it out again and again and again, but it paid off for me.
In 1953, another Oklahoman was finding his footing in 4-H, although he'll tell you it was not with the purest of intentions.
It was not because I found 4-H to be an intriguing program. I was in study hall one day. I was 13 years old. A pretty girl named Hazel Ann Zen was a girl that I had my eye on. And I asked her why she was leaving study hall, and she said she was going to a 4-H meeting. And I said, well, I don't think I'll go. She said, well, you can sit by me. And I said, of course I'll go. And at the very first meeting, the first order of business was to elect the president of the Humphreys 4-H program. I went to a little rural school called Humphreys, Oklahoma. My name was thrown out as president. and no one else's name was put into the pot. I was elected without opposition. I had no idea what it was all about. What I was able to do was basically, and I don't mean this literally, but sing and dance. I could talk.
And talk he did, straight into a career. Former Oklahoma Attorney General Larry Derryberry credits his success in politics and in the courtroom to his time in Oklahoma 4-H.
The good thing that happened to me in terms of the rest of my life was the county agent, a man named Leonard Solomon, took a liking to me, and I'm not sure why that was, except I was a little shrimp. I was just a little bitty guy, 13 years old, but smaller than anyone in the class, particularly the girls, because they had, shot on up. But he took a liking to me, and he went to my English teacher and said, I think Larry might be a good candidate for the 4-H speech contest. And she agreed, and then they surprised me with it and said, Larry, you're going to enter the Jackson County speech contest. And I said, no, I don't believe so. I believe I'll pass. And they said, no, we've talked to your mother and dad, and they think it's a great idea. I entered the speech contest, and I won the county contest.
Larry went on to win regionals, which sent him to the state competition and his very first trip to Roundup and Oklahoma A&M University.
Now, I was 13, and there was only one group of speakers. They were all ages. It went through 18 years of age. And again, to everyone's surprise, and mostly me, I won that state speech contest.
For winning, Larry was invited to Ithaca, New York to speak in front of 5,000 people, where he delivered a speech called My Cooperative while standing on a milk crate just to see over the podium. 50 years later, in 1959, in the town of Tishomingo, at the same place where W.D. Bentley began the first Corn Club, 4-H celebrated a half-century. A stone marker was set, and the next 50 years began. What lay ahead would change this club and Oklahoma youth forever.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
The country started to change in the 60s. Urban areas were busting at the seams, brought on by a baby boom after World War II. It was also the decade of space. U.S. scientists were developing technology to send a man to the moon, technology that began making its way into our homes in the form of TV dinners, Tang orange drink, and transistor radios.
By the early 60s, we were beginning to see young people that were born after World War II. And that's when the big explosion took place. 4-H moved into the suburbs and the cities big time. And enrollments in states like Oklahoma jumped to over 100,000 boys and girls involved in 4-H.
Television brought world news right into the living room, and Oklahoma 4-Hers were finding their way in front of the camera.
We're out northeast of Stillwater, Oklahoma. I'm talking to Gary Rogers, who has been declared the national winner in dairy. Now, you're in high school at the present time. You won a $600 scholarship. Where are you going to use this scholarship?
At OSU.
And you have, how many years before you'll be up there?
Next year, I hope.
Well, we want to congratulate you, Gary, on winning this honor and hope you very much success in your future endeavors.
Thank you.
My mom and dad would bring me from southwest Oklahoma up to, I believe, the Huckins Hotel, where the Oklahoma delegation would gather. And we'd go over to the train depot, which was only a couple of blocks away, load on to a train, and head out to Chicago. It was such a trip that we were out overnight. We just slept in our seats, although we didn't sleep much.
How was your trip up?
Besides a few of the bumps on the railroad, it was quite fine, and all of us enjoyed it. We even got some sleep, even though the train was a little rough.
Well, I understand that you got acquainted with some Texans on this train also.
Yes, they were in the car just ahead of us, and so we got to meet a lot of the kids before we even arrived at National Congress.
And over the years, Oklahoma was considered one of the top 2 or 3 states at the National 4-H Congress.
One year, one of my best friends and I gave a livestock conservation demonstration at the national level in Chicago. And we were a little bit unusual in that while others came in uniforms, we came kind of in ragged blue jeans and shirts that were what we used when we were working with livestock back on the farm.
One way to get on that train to Chicago was with this, a 4-H record book.
For many years, Congress was the place where your record books were judged against all the record books from other states. And Oklahoma was always, again, in the top 2 or 3 in terms of the number of national scholarship winners that we had in those national competitions.
Keeping track of expenses, challenges, or successes was a requirement for many 4-H projects. Not only were 4-Hers performing and learning a skill, but they were managing and measuring its success through record keeping. These record books included a project's financial information, photographs, newspaper clippings, ribbons, and just about anything else that would fit between the covers. Back then, as today, record books are an important part of 4-H. Rick Rexwinkle is currently a 4-H extension educator in Osage County. He lived 4-H through the 60s.
I was a 4-H member, and actually second generation 4-H member. Joined 4-H in 1965. And my main projects were beef cattle and swine, and with some crop production. And grew up on a farm there in Craig County. It was getting up early in the morning, feeding livestock, taking care of them, going to school, coming back home evenings, doing chores and feeding everything again, and we'd get up and we started all over again.
That was also about the time one of Oklahoma's most famous 4-H alumni began club work in Pittsburg County.
There was 2 reasons, no, there's 3 reasons why I enjoyed going to school so much. I got kind of boy crazy once or twice, but the main reason was for basketball and 4-H club.
20 years ago, McIntyre joined 4-H because, as she says, she could sing, have fun, and meet other kids.
Whenever we were in 4-H club, we did all kinds of music. And then me right now, I'm basically in country music. But all of my music, music is just something I love, no matter what kind it is. So 4-H club really enhanced it.
The 60s were a time of change. In August 1963, Martin Luther King made his now famous I Have a Dream speech.
Free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
On the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. And in 1964, President Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act into law. By the late 60s and early 70s, all of 4-H was being rolled under one roof at the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service on the campus of Oklahoma State University.
And in the 70s, we really hit our peak in urban outreach. We actually hired staff with the intent of them working in the inner cities and addressing some of the issues of cultural diversity and the expansion of programs into the cities.
Actually, I was hired in 1972. My first job was in Oklahoma County, in Oklahoma City. Actually, I was hired to work with the urban 4-H program, and that was inner city, working with inner city youth. And inner city youth meant people residing in limited resource housing, the housing projects, community centers, and all over. So I had a great job. I had a whole lot of work to do.
4-H focused on equal opportunities for women, persons with disabilities, and minorities. It was also during this time that 4-H started the exodus from schools and into community club systems. Outside of schools, communities were free to have more than one club. Each group held their own meetings and elected their own officers, but were all offered the same project materials. Parents and volunteers supervised with support from the Extension program's county educators.
The goal was to have young people more engaged in learning experiences outside of the school. Certainly the numbers were big back in the day whenever 4-H was in the school, because everybody wanted to get out of the 4th grade. You know, you could enroll then, you got out of class, you went to the 4-H meeting. But a lot of young people were not very engaged in the learning process. So the goal was, because we know positive youth development happens whenever young people are engaged with caring and significant adults over a period of time, we wanted to involve them in a more in-depth learning structure. And doing that in a community club tends to happen more than it does in a classroom.
The 80s brought more than leg warmers and personal computers. Oklahoma 4-H introduced what would become its biggest project: shooting sports.
And I've been in it since it started for 3 years. This last year I won first in my age division in skeet. I shot 45 birds out of 50, and I shot trap, which I didn't do too good at.
Shooting sports continues to be the largest project area in all of Oklahoma 4-H. Lost in tight-rolled jeans and crimped hair, we find Kirsten McIntyre.
There were always tears involved somewhere along the way, because my mother and I, working on a sewing project together, there were, like I said, there were tears involved at least once. And I would get done with something and she would look at it and she'd say, rip it out and do it again. And I'd be like, what's wrong with this? It's fine. It's not quite straight enough. You need to rip it out and do it right.
Today, Kirsten is the weekend co-anchor at KWTV Channel 9 in Oklahoma City.
Hi, my name is Kirsten McIntyre. I'm with Channel 9.
A place where she continues to use many of the skills she learned in 4-H.
I think what I do now goes all the way back to the 4th grade, and my mom having me be in 4-H and giving that first speech that I gave and giving me the confidence to speak in front of people, because what that translated is that I'm able to do this, and I'm able to go on the air every night and talk to millions of people and have confidence, and I really think that 4-H played a key role in that.
Kirsten, like the generations before her, holds her time at 4-H Roundup in high regard.
My first year, I'll never forget, and I still laugh about it because it's just, to me, it's just so funny, but I'd gone to my dad, and I was like, Dad, I need binoculars for Roundup. And he goes, binoculars for Roundup? And he said, I need to know why you need the binoculars. And I said, well, apparently the deal is that we stay in these high rises, and the guys are on one side and the girls are on the other, and we're hoping to get like the inside on the big high rise so that we can use the binoculars and you look over at the boys, and sometimes they'll give you phone numbers and that kind of thing. And my dad, without missing a beat, didn't pause. He said, top shelf on the right. And so I took my binoculars that year and many others.
In 1988, Langston University began its own 4-H youth development program.
The first 4-H programs we had were project clubs. We had a goat 4-H club. And also we have the fish program here, where we've done extensive research with catfish.
As the program developed, it added other project areas, such as leadership and nutrition. Funded federally, the Langston program continues to reach out to urban youth and minorities while partnering and complementing the Oklahoma State Cooperative Extension 4-H program. Both groups work together under the banner of Oklahoma 4-H.
When you go out and you talk to people, one thing they can say, 4-H got me to where I am. When you visit with the legislators, they said, I learned public speaking through 4-H. I am what I am because of 4-H.
As America entered the first Gulf War, the internet was coming online and the Berlin Wall was coming down. 4-H in the 90s began to refocus. Oklahoma 4-H lumped its projects or educational programs into one of 4 areas: science and technology, health and wellness, family well-being, and natural resources environmental awareness. It was about that time that Shannon Farrell began making a name for himself in Oklahoma 4-H.
You had all these opportunities to try to be more than you were, whether it was for a state competition or running for an office. And it's there that I really gained a lot of the self-confidence that kind of turned me into the person I'd eventually be. I can trace the moment that my life really changed to one moment at 4-H Roundup. And it was the Roundup. I was running for a District 4-H office, and I was sticking my campaign poster up by the elevators in what used to be the Wilhelm dorms. And at the moment I stuck that poster up, I realized what I was doing and that I was telling folks I really had something to contribute. And for the first time in my life, I really believed that. And that's what really set me on a much different course than I think my life would have taken had I not had that experience.
Experiences make for stories later in life, and Shannon has a few.
And as you'll recall, Roundup typically in the past occurred in late May, the height of tornado season. So we have a tornado warning for Payne County, and everyone throughout the Wilhelm dorms is trying to wake everyone else up, get down to the shelter levels. My roommate is this colleague whose name shall go unmentioned, and he was a notoriously deep sleeper. So I'm practically beating him with a stick to try to get him up and say, there's a tornado warning, we're about to die, we should really get to a lower level of this building. And I hear this, and he kind of flops over. And it's just a warning. We're always under tornado warnings in Oklahoma. We don't have to go anywhere, right? I'm like, yes, we have to go. There's actually a tornado. I was like, all right, I'm coming. So I went out the door, never thinking to look behind me to make sure I'd actually done a successful job of motivating this individual. Never showed up at the shelter level.
Austin, I believe the roommate that he was talking about is you.
Yeah, I don't remember that night one little bit, but all that sleep did me good, What, 15 or so years later, the jacket still fits and, looks all right.
Hey, it looks pretty good. Not only did 4-H give you a chance to get a good night's sleep every once in a while, it also gave you a chance to work towards a career.
Oh, absolutely. Well, public speaking was my major project area. But at the same time, the leadership skills, community service that was emphasized in the program at that time really did a lot to kind of guide me into the career field that I've taken.
As Austin moved through the 4-H program, the focus of 4-H was also moving. Projects and many 4-H experiences were built around life skills. Individual 4-H clubs were learning those skills during club hours, working on projects together, and giving back in the form of community service. A study in 2001 found Oklahoma 4-Hers performed more than 4 million hours of community service every year.
In the 90s, it was more than just cows, sows, and plows. We had leadership development, science and technology, and we were kind of on the verge of where we are now of technology being a major instrument in keeping kids involved.
At the time, Jim Rexwinkle didn't realize how well club work and those life skills in 4-H would prepare him for a career.
I can remember the guys in the green jackets standing on stage, and in particular, I can remember Shannon Farrell standing up there and telling what 4-H meant to him and why you should be a part of this organization. And I thought, someday I want to be that person, and I want to be in 4-H and be involved like he is and be able to accomplish the things that he had.
And he did. Jim followed Shannon's footsteps, becoming state 4-H president in 1999.
For accuracy is Matthew, Garrett, and then Eric. 3, 2, 1.
Today, he's sharing that passion with kids in Creek County.
That's all right.
My dad told me that you can either make a lot of money or you can enjoy what you're doing. And I had the opportunity to make a little money and found out that that wasn't what made me happy. And so I made the decision to come and work for OSU Extension and to work with youth, and I think that's where my true passion is to work with our youth and maybe make a difference.
Remember this guy? Rick Rexwinkle is Jim's father, and like father, like son. Both work as Oklahoma 4-H educators.
And I had always told him that any job that you do, it needs to be a job that you enjoy going to every day. And that's been the wonderful thing about working for Extension and doing the 4-H program.
From the days of Bentley, through 2 world wars, past the race for space, and down the information superhighway, 4-H has held true to its roots while molding itself into relevancy at every milestone.
Well, 4-H today is essentially what it was in the very beginning. It's taking the latest technology from the university and other sources and delivering it to young people so they have those skills to use throughout their entire life.
And they're off! Ow! Oh, 2354 just took out a trailer.
We're still having some technical difficulties.
Try not to do what I just did.
We lost our trigger switch.
Guys, just clear the pack. You need to get down there. All right?
The purpose of this competition today is to give students a look into engineering and the possibility of their future.
So what I'm wondering is, can we plug it up and see it work right now?
To teach them the principles of engineering and science that will help them pick their future career and go on to college and maybe inspire them to do great things whenever they get older. We can go this way.
The most fun is this competition, getting to see your robot in action against others and see how well you did compared to other schools.
Some of our newest programs are robotics. You know, we're not just about agriculture anymore, but we still have a lot of the newest science and technology being applied to our agricultural programs. Young people learning not just how to build a model rocket, but learning how the GPS and GIS systems can be used to help in their communities.
Today, 4-H has a national goal of creating 1 million new scientists in the next 10 years.
Yeah, see how much easier it is to do? You can feel everything you need to feel.
Medium over medium, and you've got to be careful on that texture because that coarseness, like I said, is not going to be.
We are judging land. We judge how good the land would be for farming or ranching.
So what's the slope?
3.
There you go.
Yes!
One of the things that I try to do as kind of my own personal goal or motto is to recognize that we need to equip young people for their future, not our past. And so the things that were important to me several years ago as a 4-H member are not necessarily important to young people today.
Ron Vick has worked with 4-Hers through Extension for the past 30 years.
Oh man, that's the greatest feeling in the world. You know, it is. Because you made a positive impact on somebody's life. And I think, you know, that's pretty important. It's not what all we acquire in life, it's what we do to pass things on for other people.
Whether it's robotics, GPS, or computer programming, partnering with the military to form 4-H clubs on Oklahoma's bases, forming community emergency response teams, or kids teaching kids about the importance of good health, 4-H continues to impact Oklahoma.
We are here. We are interested in helping. What do we need to do? And so it's not our program, it's their program.
With a century behind them, with a total number of club members nearing 1 million Oklahomans, 4-H has left its mark on the heart of this state. The question now remains, what will the next 100 years bring?
I think the most wonderful thing about 4-H is that while the subjects that we teach are incredibly important, and we address those in whatever life skills we think are the most important to our youth at that point in time. When we started out, you know, as a corn and tomato club, you know, 100 years ago, we were really trying to teach young people how to, you know, embrace the latest technologies when it came to agriculture. You know, and we're still doing that today, it's just the technology is different. I don't think the subject matter is so much the core of what 4-H's value is going forward, because we'll adapt to whatever the subject is. But the core of what 4-H is all about is helping young people understand that they can make a difference. 100 years ago, we were teaching young people those skills so that they could teach their parents. The exact same thing is true here 100 years later. It may be about energy conservation or about nutrition or whatever the case may be, but we're still trying to teach young people, hey, you can make a difference in your own life, and by teaching other people, you can make a difference in their lives as well.
As 4-H has shown us, youth can make a difference. They can impact their communities, even the world. But it can't happen without strong support from parents.
If they want their children to learn to plan and to carry out their plan and to succeed and maybe be rewarded for that, 4-H is a very good program for them to get into because they will also learn skills along the way.
It's a family affair, you know, 4-H, and I think the ones that really do good is when your whole family gets in there and help them participate. And it's a learning for both.
With the 4-H program, they can be involved, they can improve their communication with their child. A lot is learned and relationships are built in building a birdhouse together or doing something together, making chocolate chip cookies, whatever it might be. And so for parents who want to really improve their parenting skills and have positive relationships with their kids, 4-H is a good way to do that.
And I think we all need help at some point in our lives. I don't think any one of us accomplished anything that we've done by ourselves. So I see 4-H as a network of people who care and who want to see you do better.
What I'm excited for is the next 100 years as well, because I think that 4-H makes a difference in the lives of kids. It made a difference in my life, and I know that it will make a difference in the lives of thousands in the next 100 years.
And that's why the mamas and dads, the mothers and dads, need to keep focused on what's really important to those kids. It is not the afternoon television shows. It really isn't Hannah Montana that's going to change the lives of our children. It's the thinkers, those who inspire one to be a doctor or a lawyer, or the greatest calling of all, a teacher. And we can do that today, but the competition is terrible for our kids. And I think the parents and the teachers have to try to focus our kids more on what I believe is substantive rather than what is entertaining. You know, parents would probably rather see a home run than a speech, but the home run isn't going to take that kid through life. That speech just might.
No matter which generation you look at, 4-H has had a positive impact on the community. And I believe that just because we've had 100 years doesn't mean that we've used up all of our potential. I think 4-H is as important and as essential to positive community life as it ever was. We're looking at a situation today where every week you turn on the TV and find somebody say, we are behind in the race to develop new technologies. America is not producing the scientists that are needed for the next century. Well, 4-H is right here. We're ready to do that. And we've got a system which is publicly supported, but only to a certain extent, because the majority of what drives 4-H is the thousands of volunteers that donate their time to give young people these experiences. So we're not only one of the best investments that you can make, we're in the right place at the right time. So I think our future is just as bright as it's ever been, and the need for 4-H is as great as it's ever been.
4-H Leadership Council President, Sandra.
To make the best better, a motto that rings true. From the dusty fields of Tishomingo to the floor of Gallagher-Iba. 100 years of making Oklahoma communities, our country, and the world a better place for all of us.
This is the pledge as we said it 50 years ago. Hadn't changed much.
I pledge my head to clearer thinking.
Head to clear thinking.
Head to clearer thinking. My heart to greater loyalty.
My heart to greater loyalty.
My heart to greater loyalty. My hands to larger service.
Hands to larger service.
Larger service.
My hands to larger service. And my health to better living.
My health to better living.
My health to better living. For my club.
For my club, my community.
My community, my country.
My country and my world.
My world.
My world.
And my world.
And my world.
You can get your own copy of Oklahoma 4-H history in two ways. DVD copies of this program can be purchased for $15. Call Oklahoma State University Ag Communication Services at 405-744-4081 or purchase the official State 4-H history book, Generations of Clover. Orders can be made through the State 4-H office at 405-744-4493.